Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first thank the people of RapidMiner to have me accepted for this talk. And from yesterday on, I must admit that I feel myself a little bit a tiny shrimp in the ocean of analytical and analytics. As a physician, let's say I'm a little stranger here in this community, but I have enjoyed it a lot. I would like to take you on my path. I have been started, I think, about 5-6 years ago, because I was confronted with the fact that 15% of our national budget is going to healthcare, and there is almost no analytics involved. And this was very strange for me. Myself, I'm an anesthesiologist, so I went to the university, as you all did, I think, but took me, it takes 13 years before I could enter the environment I'm playing in right now. The topic I will discuss with you is a presentation using RapidMiner in my environment from my point of view, which might not be the universal point of view, but how I am confronted with patients and data, what we normally do with the data, how we can use it, but more importantly, how we not use it. And the key message from my presentation is, we heard it, bring the analytics to the data. My key message is bring the analytics to the domain expert. I consider myself the domain expert in medical stuff. But when I talk to my colleagues on data and data mining, they really look that I'm coming from Mars, which could be possible, of course. But they really need to be introduced. What is the added value of data mining, of business analytics, or business intelligence in a medical environment? Okay. You all know that the data scientist must be a superhuman if he wants to be an expert, and so he needs to have something or some pre-education on mathematics and statistics, on software development, and he certainly needs to be able to communicate with other people. Strange, I did some data mining the last days on how many times the word business was used during the presentations and how many times research was used, because we are talking about data mining, and of course there is more data in the world than only business. There's also research. And the last months I have been contacted several times by universities wanting to spend an awful lot of money for data lakes. Data lakes are environments, platforms where they can put their data after, for instance, being de-identified, to be able to reuse it. We must not forget that research is very expensive, and also how competitive research is from day to day. Certainly in Europe compared with Asia and the States, it's only growing. So the need for data mining is growing. I started my presentation by saying in medical environments there's almost no data mining, no analytics. I think you cannot understand it, why it is like this. If we look, so this is the presentation, let's bridge two solitudes, the data scientist and the person like myself, the physician. To present or to start a discussion, in fact, I published a small letter in a paper with impact factor about a little bit less than 4, Critical Care, which is an important journal for the medical community. It was just a letter with a title I choose to be able to activate most people. And the letter now is highly accessed. It's nothing new. I just mentioned we have a lot of data and we're doing nothing at all with it. We don't use it. Why don't we use it? I'm trying to analyze it, why we are not using the data we get on a day-to-day basis. There are several reasons. The main reason, and it's a little bit in connection with the previous presentation, is the privacy legislation. Privacy is very important. We will have to keep our privacy from the patient alive. And on the other hand, the legislation is not adapted to present evolutions in technology. So some legal engineering will be necessary. Okay, this is the environment I'm working in. The patient here now is a small baby. It can also be an adult. You can imagine this is a little bit different than the elder people from the previous lecture, and the smartwatch and drinking. At the left side, you see all infusion pumps. Each level, it's not a database or a server, each level is a pump with a drug inside, with a speed, with a concentration. You see about 15 pumps, you see ventilator, you see renal replacement devices, you see monitor. 24/7 data is coming from one patient. This data is arriving at our environment where we have to change it to information and perhaps furthermore to knowledge and, if it's possible, to wisdom. But for this individual patient, every day we need to look at trends, we need to look at the values, we need to compare them in possibilities, how drugs can react, knowing that each patient is different also. Another reason why data mining is not accepted is the fact that physicians, doctors are very scared. And they think computers will change our world and will change the possibilities we have to interact with the patient. And this is, I think, I discussed it several times, a wrong way of thinking. If you imagine that 13 years of education is necessary for me to stand before the patient on intensive care to make a decision, then I'm asking myself, okay, why did I need 13 years to do that? Oh, okay, I need to have some practical handlings and to be able to practice my medical practice during daytime and night. But why the 13 years? Well, there is a lot that has to be studied related just to data. I give you an example. If I was wondering during a round, how much power, calculation power, should I need to make a right decision right now, based on the data I see, based on the data from yesterday, for this individual patient? Well, I think a smartwatch, or even a cell phone, a smartphone should be able to do it. Why then do we need physicians? Well, we have to read and study and incorporate a lot of data. Imagine the interactions possible from drugs. We use, let's say, 300 type of different drugs every day, and for 2,000 products available on the market. I'm not able to know every interaction possible, and interactions can be influenced by renal failure and patients, asthmatic patients, diabetic patients, so it's impossible for me to know the latest data, the latest advances for this little topic. Imagine that I'm in front of the patient with my smartphone, and I see, okay, I have given this and this drug to this patient, these are the parameters. What is the interaction I can predict that could be possible, that could be followed the next hours? This is not available, or this is very scarce. This is available in a very little amount. So this is a problem, and certainly a point where data mining could be of aid, and where data mining is not in confrontation with my personal environment where I want to work in. How is it functioning today? Now, when I see a patient and I give some medication, I go to the internet or I look in medical journals what the interaction is. So What could be the added value? The added value could be an optimization of my treatment, like the example of drug prescription, reduction of adverse events. We're living in a world and a time where safety is very important in hospitals and in everything where healthcare plays a part in. So I know some people have done it or are working on admission and readmission rates. And it's important, and there you could use the smartphone to identify certain populations at risk. It is absolutely in its infancy, and it's a demand for myself, and there's a reason why I'm here. I have nothing to prove, I think, as a physician, but there's a reason I'm here. There's a huge demand for data scientists and people with knowledge and experience in data mining in our environment. Google started Google Health several years ago. They stopped it for several reasons. Most of them were, I think, even political. They wanted to use a certain type of baseline. I think they restarted it a bit in a different context. They have in some publications, also quite recent ones, where they compare a certain study with Google baseline. But what is important, we have seen yesterday, you have a lot of data and you cut your outliers and do you take the average, the median and stuff like that. They say the Google baseline was of similar scope, enrolling 10,000 people over 2 or 3 years. And this person speculates that the approach will not be effective in prevention. Why? Because it could lead to unnecessary and potential harmful interventions. So knowing or registering or using a lot of sensors and having a lot of data creates a different scene than the scene we have today. Sometimes we make jokes when nurses or other people are asking, do we need to attach this monitor and this monitor? And sometimes we make jokes by saying what we don't know, we don't care about. So how we make the decisions towards our patients in relation to the data, it's not directly straightforward. It's difficult for me to describe purely scientific why I consider a patient as ill, or he's not going well, or I think it won't take 2 hours and he will be dead. Of course, I can take blood pressure and stuff like that, but there are other things which are very difficult to analyze and to sense, to monitor, or to quantify. An important message, and I have written it also in the text in the book, in the little book, or in the proceedings, is ontology. And not the ontology of philosophy, but you all know, I think, ontology of the ICT. The way how we describe certain concepts, I know Barry Smith is not liking the word concept, but how we define certain concepts in what we use. Several times when I try to explain people what is ontology, well, I say, let's imagine we're in a bar and we're talking, and the whole night we were drinking a lot, and we're talking about love. And I am talking about affection, but the other one was talking about sex, let me say something like that. We had a wonderful night, we joked a lot and stuff like that. And we both thought that we were talking about the same subject, and we're talking about a completely different subject. And this is important. Before we receive the data and we try to make some interpretation, some analysis, we have to know that the data arrives in the way it should have arrived as, and that the data is not data from a wrong sensor and not only outliers or different trends could help us. So the communication with the domain expert, with the person who made the registration or who have done the censoring, those people should be part of data analysis. The small study I would like to present you, which is submitted and not accepted yet to +1, is on the use of ICU data coming from a large database in the States. And to look whether we could use RapidMiner with it in with a Hadoop link. ICU is a different environment than the rest of the hospital. It's about 10% of the hospital beds, 10% or more mortality. That's a lot. 1 of 10 people arriving at ICU die within a few days or a few hours, and it costs more than 4 times what normal hospitalization costs. So we perform a clinical examination, we do a medical history, and then we have the data. And this is the pre-processed data from a medical point of view we need to use to make a decision, to start a treatment, to change a treatment, or to prescribe a surgery or stuff like that. We, like I said, we used a database, Mimic2 database. And the database is not a new database, it's a database which has been constructed by Beth Israel Diakoness Hospital in the States together with Philips and the MIT University. The database is constructed like you see. I'm not going to in very details. There have been several publications on this topic. No one ever, it's a database from 2001, the Mimic2, to 2008, about 40,000 patient admissions with a complete monitoring and text and protocols and everything you want. De-identified, anonymized, the data shifted to 3,000 and you don't know. So a useful database, nobody ever used it in RapidMiner. We were the first and I'm very proud for it. Okay, how do they present it? You can access the database, and I really would like to stimulate you all to give it a try, those who are interested. The database can be accessed, or let me say about 4,000 patients can be seen and analyzed, well, not for free, but just without any examination. For the rest, you need to do a simple test. It took me 30 minutes or something. Where they want to stress, of course, the protection of human research data. They provide you, at this point, with 2 ways to access the data. They have a web-based query builder. I will show you the screen, which is not that difficult, but, and this becomes more difficult for me, you need to know some SQL stuff to make a good analysis or to make a good query. And then they also have a virtual machine in Ubuntu, where they have the data and a similar type of user interface, but with this same difficulty. I started to use RapidMiner, I can't remember how many years, but it must be 4 or 5 years ago, in image mining. I thought it was a good tool to have my images of chronic wounds analyzed. Then I saw that image mining went a little bit, was a little bit less popular, and now it becomes more popular again. So when I came back to this database, I thought, okay, why not use RapidMiner for it, and let's give it a try. So I contacted the network I had, and I tried to connect it. I was able to have it organized. I can't give you all the details because I don't understand all of them, but I will give you the presentation. So the database has got about 38 tables, which are, of course, linked by patient IDs and stuff. The tables we used were the lab results and then the data on the patients, like age, comorbidity, which is which diseases is the patient having the moment he arrives at intensive care, and then the details related to the stay on intensive care. This is the query builder they provide. You see the 38 tables. It looks a little bit like the Hadoop manager, or how is it called? The database manager, which is in RapidMiner. And then you can have a query. You see it over here. Is it working? No. Oh, off. and then you see the query here, and you have a screen to write something down. Nothing sexy, nothing fancy, and no just free space. Enter your query, and you're done. And you get nice tables, but with one exception: you only can export, and of course, they do that because of limitation of data. I think you can only export 10,000 rows in a time. So that's difficult, knowing that this database has about 40,000 admission, and it's not because they have 40,000 admission that you only have 40,000 rows. You can have several million rows. That's the Ubuntu VirtualBox. It looks the same, and you can use it for querying. What we have done is, so the patient selection we made was about 11,000 patients. We took the patients older than 15 years, so which were considered as adult, and we used the age of it. It's not important, of course, age of admission, comorbidity, and how ill they were, and stuff like that. What we have been doing is we used Hadoop. You see the Hadoop operator here with all the operators which are in it, and the way I accessed Hadoop was by accessing the data on the server. You have was Hive management. That was you could yesterday I saw Martin using the Hive management. I don't use it very often, but if you want to look at the guy RapidMiner for Dummies, well, I am the guy. So if I can use this as a physician, and I've never had one lecture or read any book on ICT or computers, then you must be able to use it. And it is amazing. I've published it just to timestamp my link, so people with more time than me could not publish it before me, to how to access the Mimic database from RapidMiner, and I just published it on the internet as a timestamp. And there you can see I can do whatever I want. I retrieve the tables I want, I do some filtering, I sample, I set a role, and then finally I get my result. And we did some tests. These are the results of the data, which are, of course, not important. And I'm not going into any medical details, of course. It's just to have an example. But we were able, just by using RapidMiner, to have some results which are in a good way to have these results published. Of course, the question is, how can we use these results, and how can it change my daily practice? I know research is different from changing practice, but what I certainly see is the fact that there's a lot of data available in the hospital, in the facility, and available on the internet, health-related, and there's not so much being done. And the main reason is, of course, it is so difficult to understand the value of a certain parameter, the confrontation of two parameters. Is this a realistic value? Is it not? You really need, and this is my key message, you really need some domain expertise to be able to analyze these data. What we also have done, and I must thank Martin for this, we have looked for which attributes were important. So we took all the attributes and selected the first 10, and the ones who were in my interest, the platelets during at the minimum level, maximum level, and at the start were one of the 10 important attributes. We also used a ROC curve for both for the support factor machine we used and the naive Bayes. And you will see what was the reply I received from the journal I sent it to. This is by using a small Python algorithm, also thanks to Martin. Okay, so the conclusions, and I have still two slides. The conclusions is that the Mimic database for us, and Mimic 2, there is now a Mimic 3 coming, and they will install the Mimic at the Amazon server, W3, whatever it might be, is a valuable database for intensive care. So we successfully developed and integrated the RapidMiner, which facilitates our analysis. For me, it's a major step forward. It has never been done. And the way to use it, of course, is the sky is the limit, of course. Now I did some example, and so many of my colleagues contact me, I want to analyze this and that, and can we do? So once you have constructed your first architecture, the rest is playing, in fact. But what is essential is the way that we communicate, or the communication between the people using or generating the data and data scientists. Next phase will certainly be the use of clinical decision support and closed loop systems, which are already existing, but in very small amount. Closed loop systems are the final step, in fact, where you have some sensors and you have some analysis, and then it gives you feedback, and it guides you. Well, it guides you. It steers, in fact, the protocol you're using. We have been using some closed loop protocols in a very dedicated environment in pharmacokinetics, and it's already available, but it's a little bit too complex right now, I think, to be able to go on a holiday and do my practice by phone, just saying, let the closed loop run. And there will be more analysis necessary before medical practice will change. So I sent the text of this analysis to +1, which is a paper also 3.5 as impact, and that's what I a little bit what I received from the review. So this is strange for me. This is new. I think if you use another program, nobody ever asks me, describe the procedure to install and use your program. Strange, but they asked it. Then, okay, then they say, so I used the naive Bayes and the support vector machine. That was their reply. The authors should use add more state-of-the-art methods, such as meta-learning methods. Some of these include AdaBoost and random forest. Okay, we will give it a try, but for what it is. And then this could be right. I only used these parameters which were of my interest. Must more study which features are included before building a predictive model. And then the question, is Hadoop cluster necessary for the task? And I remember the words of Martin yesterday. I don't think so, but it was nice to do, and it's a good beginning. How many nodes? What are the assigned tasks? I don't know if I even can write something down from that. And then there was, and it's something you all intelligent people should think about. I see in RapidMiner always the ROC space and the ROC curves, but there's also a PR space. I tried to read this article, which I found quite interesting. I don't know whether anyone ever thought of, sorry? 1 minute, yes, ever thought of integrating the precision recall, because there are some situations where you might need both. And some other stuff. Okay, so my final or pre-final slide is, are there questions, and who is interested to join? I started a few months ago RapidMiner for Health Google Plus community, and some people are active on it, and you're all invited to join us.